If you don't have vision in an organization and you're a leader, it is catastrophic. Like there's a proverb that says, where there's no vision, people fail. So the role of a coach to help establish vision for any leader is fundamental. If you don't know where you're going, nobody knows where you're going on your team. If you can't set if you don't know where your vision is, you can't set goals, you can't set priorities, you can't do priorities. So vision is absolutely fundamental. On the same token, systems are absolutely fundamental. Your systems in your organization define the ceiling of your organization. You can't grow any bigger than your systems. You're only as good as the systems that you have. And everybody has systems. You might have good systems or you might have bad systems, but you're not going to be able to outgrow your system. So if your marketing systems aren't good, you're not going to get new customers. If your leadership systems aren't good, your team's going to be unhappy. If your resource management systems aren't good, you're not going to have any money. So these two things of coaching and consulting, it's not just like, oh, coaches help with vision, consultants help with systems. It's like, no, coaches help with vision. And consultants help with systems. These things are absolutely powerful and incredible for any leader. And any leader really needs to have very clear vision and very good systems if they want to reach their full potential.
Welcome to the Growability Podcast, where we help business coaches become better coaches and business leaders build better systems. I'm your co-host, Bernie Anderson, along with the founder of Growability, Joshua MacLeod. This is season 3 of the Growability Podcast, where we are helping coaches discover how to best implement the Growability Toolkit. So, Joshua, give us an overview of today's episode in less than a minute.
Okay, well, that's
Can
great.
you do it?
I can do it. Thanks, Bertie. So today's episode, we're going to be asking a really important question. And this is a question for all the coaches, business consultants out there. How do I know if I'm qualified to be a business coach or a consultant? And I'll just say right now, if you are a coach or consultant and you haven't asked this question, how do I know if I'm qualified? You probably shouldn't be a coach or consultant. What we're going to cover is 3 fundamentals that I believe are critical for any business coach or consultant. The first is your time has to be worth money. The second is you have to care more about transformation than transaction. And the third is you have to be able to start your own fire. So if you are already a coach, if you want to be a business coach, if you have hired a business coach or a nonprofit coach, then this episode is going to be really valuable. And so I'm excited to dig into season 3, episode 1.
Well, it's funny, Joshua, we've talked about this season 3 and building out this season and what this is going to look like in our podcast. The coaching movement throughout the world is exponentially expanding, right?
Yeah.
In America, in the United States alone, there are over 34,000 executive coaches, of which I guess you and I are 2 of those, right?
34,002.
34,002. There you go. That's right. I was just going to say, it does seem like anyone with access to YouTube and a cup of coffee feels like, hey, I'm going to be a business coach. I'm going to be, or some kind of coach, right? Like coaching is like a thing. So we're part of that statistic, aren't we?
Yeah. And that's just in America. But you think about the hundreds of thousands of coaches that are all throughout the world. How many of them are really qualified? I think one of the biggest realities in coaching that I've come to understand is that if you are going to coach other people, it really needs to be more of a calling than sort of like a career. I think it's probably one of the hardest careers or one of the hardest occupations that you can do. There was this television show when I was growing up called Quantum Leap. And in this show, this guy I don't know what happened. He ate some bad Cheerios or something, but he started like showing up in other people's bodies at different times and spaces throughout history. And so he would show up and he's like a surgeon that's about to do surgery, or he'd pop into like, I'm in a cockpit of an airplane and I've got to fly this airplane. And if you're going to coach somebody, if you're going to work and help a leader or help a coach, it's kind of like that. You get thrown into an environment where there are a just vast amount of complexities. There's different work cultures. There's different team members. There's problems that are obvious, but then there's a lot more problems that are not obvious, that are kind of down underneath the surface. So if you are going to be an effective coach, you have to be very good at quickly understanding a situation. And depending on the business, this can be extremely complicated. Like I've actually worked with surgeons. So going into work with a surgery office, and I'm like, I realized, you know what? I have to look really dumb for a long time until I understand the vocabulary of what it is that we're talking about, or the complexities of the revenue cycle and who the payers are and what the clients need and things like that. So for anybody that just kind of goes on YouTube and they're like, oh, I'm going to be a business coach. This is great. I'm going to do this. It's like, go watch several episodes of Quantum Leap and see if that's something that you really want to do, because it really is. It's an extremely challenging field or career, and it's definitely not something that you should take lightly.
The mental lift of coaching is real. I mean, it's very real, to the point of after I spend a day of either coaching or consultation, I am exhausted, physically exhausted. Like I feel like I've been out running and lifting weights.
Yeah.
And I wish it did the same for my body as it does for my brain, right? Like, I mean, I wish that like it counted as that. It doesn't. So a coach has to have the ability for the heavy mental lift, and should probably work out a little bit too, especially as you get old and, those muscles start deteriorating, right? But let's do this, Joshua. Let's start with let's try to answer the question for the podcast today. So our podcast title is, how does a person know if they're qualified to be a business or nonprofit coach or consultant? Let's talk a little bit about what the difference is between coaching and consulting.
Yeah, that's a really, really important distinction. Coaching is primarily about helping leaders to establish vision. And you want to give them perspective, and you want to help them set priorities. Consultation is primarily about systems for leadership, systems for resource, systems for teamwork, systems for marketing. There's a really big difference there, because some people are extremely talented at helping others to clarify their vision. What's your purpose? Let's get you motivated. Let's get your things in order. This is all coaching. And some people are really gifted with consultation. Let's look at the numbers. What did the numbers tell us? Let's look at your team results. What do your strengths tell us? What does this look like? So a coach is really going to help somebody with vision, perspective, and priorities. A consultant is going to help someone with assessment and strategy and systems.
If you are coaching or consulting other people, is it important to be good at both? Do you have to be good at both? Do you have to pick one or the other? What do you think about that?
Well, I think it is important, depending on figuring out the scope of what it is that you want to help someone with, like what you want to help a leader with. So if you're only good at one or the other, if you're only good at coaching or only good at consulting, you're only going to be able to give them kind of half of the equation. So like at Growability, any Growability coach, I want to make sure that anybody on our team is not only good at consultation, but also good at coaching. If you don't have vision in an organization and you're a leader, it is catastrophic. Like there's a proverb that says, where there's no vision, people fail. So the role of a coach to help establish vision for any leader is fundamental. If you don't know where you're going, nobody knows where you're going on your team.
Absolutely.
If you can't set if you don't know where your vision is, you can't set goals, you can't set priorities, you can't do priorities. So vision is absolutely fundamental. On the same token, systems are absolutely fundamental. Your systems in your organization define the ceiling of your organization. You can't grow any bigger than your systems. You're only as good as the systems that you have. And everybody has systems. You might have good systems or you might have bad systems, but you're not going to be able to outgrow your system. So if your marketing systems aren't good, you're not going to get new customers. If your leadership systems aren't good, your team's going to be unhappy. If your resource management systems aren't good, you're not going to have any money. So these two things of coaching and consulting, it's not just like, oh, coaches help with vision, consultants help with systems. It's like, no, coaches help with vision. And consultants help with systems. These things are absolutely powerful and incredible for any leader. And any leader really needs to have very clear vision and very good systems if they want to reach their full potential.
Spot on. Yep, spot on. Okay, Joshua, let's get to the heart of this whole conversation.
Yeah.
You mentioned at the beginning of our episode that there are 3 fundamentals for considering whether or not a person should be a coach or a consultant. Tell us about the first one. What's the first fundamental?
Yeah, so the first fundamental, the first way that you know that you're qualified to be a coach or consultant is that your time has to be worth money. I believe that there are 5 critical and key ingredients that anyone who coaches others must have, and that makes them worth what they charge. So here they are. Number 1 is expertise. Number 2 is perspective. Number 3 is confidence. Number 4 is compassion. And number 5 is candor. So if you're going to coach somebody else and charge them money, there are 5 things you have to bring to the table: experience, perspective, confidence, compassion, and candor.
I think these are some I think these are 5 great ways to provide value to a customer or to a client. And I'm eager to dive into these. So expertise, let's start there.
Yeah. If I want to go work with a leader and it's not obvious that I'm an expert and I really know what I'm talking about, then it's not going to work. So in my coaching journey, I've now spent more than 15,000 hours and read several hundred business books to make sure that when I showed up to coach, that I would have something valuable to say. And this is what actually the entirety of Growability is set up to help business coaches and consultants be actual experts in business fundamentals. And so it took me 15,000 hours of studying the marketplace of what are the fundamentals of business, because there's not a lot of good sources out there that say, look, this absolutely fundamental, this not so much, this connected to all these other things, this you don't need it, So that's why Growability, we've developed this entire Growability model so that anybody who wants to coach or consult can sign off on, I've got the fundamentals, or they can say I'm an expert in the business fundamentals. And I think everybody who even thinks about coaching or consulting, they're like, I have to be an expert in something. Like they're not going to get into coaching or consulting without some level of expertise. But the second is different than expertise. And this is such a critical ingredient in coaching. This is perspective. And perspective is less about what you know, and it's so much more about how you see. As a coach or a consultant, I'm not trying to tell someone what to think. If my entire job is I'm going to tell you to see this thing the way that I see it, or think this thing the way that I think, then you're not really being a coach. You're not actually helping that person to grow, to mature, to be better. Yep. What I want to do as a coach is I want to teach someone how to think. And the best way to do that is to give them perspective on whatever it is, the scenario that they're facing. I have perspective from visiting more than 30 countries. I've been able to spend years of my life working in the developing world. So when I think about people scenarios, I'm not just stuck in, Franklin, Tennessee mindset of people like that. That's not, I'm thinking about that. That's great. And I can relate to you. I lived in Franklin for 10 years. So, hey, I can relate to you thinking about Franklin, Tennessee, but I also can relate to like people all over the world. So if you are starting or thinking about being a coach or consultant, really think about what is the perspective. I mean, great things to help give you perspective. A failed business. Having a failed business gives you great perspective. Lots of hardship You didn't win the lottery. You got in a train wreck. Okay, those are things that actually have a lot of value. And I think as a coach or consultant, you want to have expertise, but you also need to have perspective. The third thing is confidence. If you are trying to help someone change their behavior, if you're trying to help someone grow and become like better at what they do, they have to believe in themselves, and you have to help them believe in themselves. And it's hard to get somebody else to believe in themselves if you don't believe in yourself. If you don't have the confidence to believe in what you're telling someone, they're not going to have the confidence to believe what you're saying. And if they don't believe what you're saying, they're never going to make an actual change. Confidence is a key ingredient in transferring courage to somebody else. If you don't have confidence, you're really not going to be able to be a coach. And you're definitely not going to be able to sell like coaching engagements. Now, in our world of these hundreds of thousands of coaches that are out there, I think one of the big problems is you have tons of coaches with confidence, but they don't have perspective and they don't have expertise. And so it's when you're surrounded, like if you're a client and you meet somebody who's confident, you're like, dang, they must know what they're talking about because they're confident. So if you're vetting a coach or consultant, make sure that you're actually asking them about where their confidence comes from.
Yeah.
Okay, the fourth key ingredient that is an indicator that you should be a coach or consultant is compassion. Compassion is an interesting word because basically compassion means shared passion. And we've talked a lot about this, that the word passion means suffering. When I think about passion, I'm thinking about what do I love so much that I'm willing to suffer for it? Well, if you're a coach or consultant, you not only share in the victories of your clients, but you're also sharing in the suffering and the challenges and the hardships. Like their problems are your problems when you're trying to coach and help them. So if you don't have compassion, and this might kind of cross the line of like where I'm talking about like good humans and not just good coaches, but I feel like you should be a good human if you're going to be a coach. If you're 100%. Going to be out into the marketplace and you don't have any compassion, like you can have expertise, you can have perspective, you can have confidence, but if you don't really care, don't go into this business. It's kind of shocking that we live in a world where people don't really care. Like I went to this marketing conference. It was like more than a decade ago or something. Like I went to this conference and I left after 15 minutes because in the setup to the conference, their whole thing was, hey, we're going to show you how to fake like you actually love people. And I'm like, oh, no. You're gonna what? Like you're going to share with people how to fake like you actually like them? Like that's ridiculous. So if you don't have compassion, don't be a coach, don't be a consultant. Yeah. And then finally, there's candor. Candor is a critical ingredient for coaching because candor allows you to tell your clients what they need to hear and not what they want to hear. If someone is paying you to coach them, they don't need somebody that's a yes man. They don't need somebody that's just going to say, oh, that's great. Oh, you're paying me. Oh, let me make you feel good. No, I've discovered that at some point in time, I'm going to get into a little bit of a snarky argument with any of my clients because I'm like, no, you're wrong. You're in trouble. You're in danger. So if I don't have candor, I'm not really being a good coach because I'm just telling people what they want to hear instead of telling people what they need to hear. When people hire a coach, they're hiring for candor. So these 5 things, expertise, perspective, confidence, compassion, and candor are fundamentally critical ingredients for being a coach or consultant.
There's so much in what you just talked about, Joshua, that is important. But I'm looking at this list of 5 things: expertise, perspective, confidence, compassion, and candor. What would you say to the person who's listening right now who is saying, oh man, I've got like 2 of these things.
Yeah.
Or no, I have 3 of these things, but I don't really have some of these other things, but I still kind of feel like coaching or consulting is something I want to do. And it's maybe a calling, like maybe.
Yeah.
What would you say to that person?
I would say don't quit your day job. So
Fair enough.
if you're a coach or a consultant, these are the things that make your time worth money. So be a volunteer consultant. Go and try to help someone. And actually, that's been a huge path, I think, for me and everybody, frankly, that's on our team. I think I could do this. Let me serve and find out. If you're not sure, just go volunteer somewhere and try and help. And then you'll quickly find out, wow, I don't have perspective, or I don't have candor, or I don't have compassion, or this isn't right for me. Or you're like, wow, okay, I could do this thing. So my advice is don't quit your day job, or, don't charge too much. If you have all of these things, then you can charge really anything because you're saving people years or decades. I mean, you're helping them. If you help somebody with vision and systems, the impact on them is not like for the day. The impact that you have is for their entire life, especially if you help them change perspective that was, immature or wrong or unfruitful.
Don't quit your day job yet. Maybe.
Yeah, exactly.
You just need some time. You need some time and to dive into that. That's great. That's great counsel. So, all right. So the first fundamental, that was a lot. We just talked about that you need to make sure that your time is worth cash. Your time needs to be worth money. So what's the second fundamental?
The second fundamental to where you can tell whether you should be a coach or consultant is if you care more about transformation than transaction. Coaching is not a transactional business. You don't go to a coach like you go to the grocery store. I need eggs. I'm going to buy eggs. You go to a coach if you want to transcend where you currently are. A coach that is transactional has a singular focus, the money. Let me make more money from you. Oh, I can improve your bottom line by XYZ. All you have to do is jump through all of these hoops. That's just bogus. Don't work with a coach that's just a transaction. Now, you can hire vendors all day long that are just transactional. Hey, I need a better way to set up my software. Oh, well, here you go. Here's a transaction. You didn't have it. Now you have it. It's a project. We start and finish. Coaches and consultants are more about transformation than they are about transaction. What that means is that they have to be really gifted at relationship. And relationship requires something called intimacy, where I have to be able to be vulnerable with you as a client. And then that client will then in turn be vulnerable with me. And then we can actually go somewhere. If you don't care more about the relationship than the paycheck, then you shouldn't be a coach or a consultant. Like, go find something where you don't have to interact with people to make money. know, but so for me, that's it. Like, coaching should fundamentally be about transformation, not just transaction.
Your time has to be worth money.
Yeah.
And your focus has to be on relationships. So there's like the two things going on here where there's money, yes, but it's relationships that's driving the thing, not the money,
Well, something I've discovered is that you can't have long-term sustainable growth without a transformation. I can't transaction my way into health for a long period of time.
Correct.
I can't have transformation if I don't have relationship, because humans are designed for relationship. Like, we thrive on relationship. Anybody who's been in business for more than 20 years will say business is all about relationships. That's really is all about relationships. So if anyone should understand this better than anyone else, it has to be the business coach or consultant. If your whole mindset is, I want a better house or a better job or more freedom or more this, so I'm going to set up this coaching business, that you're in the wrong lake. Like, if your whole thing is, wow, I love to see other people grow, and I care more about other people growing than my own success, then you're in the right lane. As a coach or consultant, your fruit grows up on somebody else's tree. That's one of my favorite quotes from Bob Buford.
Yeah.
If you are a coach or consultant, your focus is not on the transaction of the coaching or the consultation that you're providing. Your focus is on the transformation and the health and the life of the leader and the teams of people that leader influences. So number one, your time has to be worth money. Number two, you have to be more focused on transformation than transaction. If you have what it takes to be a coach or a consultant.
Okay, so let's hit the third and final ingredient necessary for someone to be a qualified coach or consultant. What would that third ingredient be, Joshua?
So the final thing, Bernie, to know that you should be a coach or consultant is, I've called this, you need to be able to start your own fire. You know who told me to read several hundred business books? Nobody. You know who made me read several hundred business books? Nobody. You know who made me learn accounting stuff that I didn't understand? Nobody. No one, if you're going to be a coach or consultant, nobody is standing over you saying, oh, you need to do this. I'm going to hold you accountable. You have to get this to go. If you aren't willing to start your own fire and to take responsibility for your time and the things that you say to your clients and how you empower and how you equip them, it's not going to work. People want to go into coaching so that they just have time freedom and they don't have to be accountable to anybody. It's not going to work. Like, if you have to be accountable to yourself, this is such a small group of people who are actually self-accountable, who read the book and then they change their own behavior. That's what a coach is. A coach is somebody that they don't just read the book and say, oh, that was a great thought. The coach reads the book, says, wow, that's brilliant. And then I'm going to change my life now to reflect what I learned. And then you actually go and teach that to your clients. So that's why I'm like, hey, you have to be able to start your own fire if you want to be a coach.
Okay, Joshua, today you have thrown down the gauntlet for our audience here. Anybody listening to this today is going to be asking themselves the question: Do I really have what it takes to be a good coach or a consultant? And so I'm sure someone out there is asking like the next half of that question.
Yeah.
Do I really need to do all of these things to be a coach or a consultant? Is it necessary? What would you say to that person?
Yeah, 100%. If you're going to be a coach or consultant, how do you know if you're qualified to be a coach or consultant? Number one, your time has to be worth money. Number two, you have to care more about transformation than transaction. And number three, you have to be able to start your own fire. If you have some of these qualities, if you're somewhat gifted in some of these things, go be an entrepreneur and get a really good coach. You don't have to have all those things if you don't want to be a coach. If you are going to be a coach, you do have to have all of those things. Every leader needs a coach and a consultant. It's just the way that it is. Or your organization isn't big enough yet, but when you grow, you will need a coach or consultant in the future.
Yeah. Okay. Well, then, so someone may be listening to this now, then, Joshua, and saying, okay, I got this. I believe I'm going to do all three of those things. I am insane and want to make a career out of coaching and consulting other people. What would you say to that person?
Well, I would say that you need a really strong community to thrive. And that's why we created the Growability Coaches community. So I would invite that person to join we meet twice a month for 2 90-minute sections. We have chats. We have like a whole group where you can go and work with other coaches and overcome like really challenging challenges within the client set that you're working with. Community is critical. If you can have a community of other coaches, that's just kind of like, that's what we have, and that's just through the moon. I mean, that's just incredible. If you can't have a community of other coaches, just make sure you have really good community. Yeah. Friends, family, other experts. It's a hard calling. It's a really hard calling, but it's the most valuable thing in the world because you can impact so many lives. Good coaches create really good leaders. They help mature really good leaders, and really good leaders make new leaders and impact lives all over the world.
Really, those communities, we're building those right now, and they just keep getting better.
Yeah,
I'm leading one right now, a different kind of community, but the coaches community is getting started. It's going to be really, really good. And
Now,
I
talk
would
about
just
a
encourage
niche.
everyone to.
Yeah, talk about the niche community, Bernie, that you have. This is for cross-cultural leaders of businesses and nonprofits all over the world. And so if you're one of those people, being able to be in a community with other people in those communities, that's incredible. So check out Growability Communities. That's a big deal. That's something that we've put a lot of emphasis on. I'm working, strictly, particularly in this new podcast season, with that coaches community, as this podcast represents. These are the kind of conversations that in this season I'm really working to have to encourage the people who are coaches or using the Growability model. But if you're a nonprofit leader, Bernie's has an incredible community. You can go and join that community, or maybe you want to start a community, and Bernie and I can help you out. We've got an incredible group of coaches already at Growability that can lead a community. Maybe you already have a community, but you'd love to have a consultant and a coach in that community. Hey, email info@growability.com or Joshua@growability.com.
Info@growability.com.
We'll connect you with
That's
a really
right.
good coach.
Hey, Joshua, I need to go, and I've started my fire pretty well. I need to tend to it a little bit, so I'm gonna go tend to my fire to prep for some coaching and consultation engagements that I have this month, this week, actually. Before we go, I want to remind everyone that you are doing better than you think, and you have more potential than you know. Thank you for growing with Growability. Please be sure to like and subscribe to our podcast and our YouTube channel, and share it with people you really like. We'll see you next week.
We'll see you next week.